just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again. Hello, everybody. It's me again, Lord. Old Lonnie Jones selling this story and what God has done for him. All the stories I'm telling, if I don't mention God during the episode, it doesn't mean He hadn't helped me in that episode. It's just probably nothing real drastic that He's done. But we're going to episode 21 now, and I was telling you in the other episode about playing in Monticello, Kentucky, coming back and it's 3 degrees above zero and it's snowing, and we got back home. We should have got back home about probably 2 o'clock in the morning that morning, and instead we got back home that afternoon about 12:30, to best my recollection. We pulled in this driveway here, what is now is Larry's Grand Old Garage, about 12:30 on a Sunday morning. That's the best my recollection on that round. That was one of the rounds on the old Flex bus that I was telling you about that I don't know, have a clue at this point. I need to ask somebody why they call them Flex buses, but they weren't like a Silver Eagle and Prevost and all that. So there's an answer to it, and I'll try to find out what that is so I can explain to you a little bit better. Well, I'll tell you another story or two about going to a couple of places on the old Flex bus. We went down to Lawrenceburg to the fair one time on the old bus, and we pulled in that old bus, and it really looked pretty rough. Like I said, it needed a good paint job and everything, and I can't remember the lady's name. I should have remembered her name before I got Dale Wood. I do remember her name. Dale Wood was a piano player on the Grand Ole Opry. She was booked on the Lawrenceburg Fair at the same time he was. Of course, there were more than her, but she's the one that I remember the best is Dale Wood. She was a piano player, and she had a son with her. And we got down there, and she just she was the sweetest lady, one of the sweetest ladies I ever met. She just became one of our great friends while we were down doing that, and that was one of the times he carried us down on the old Flex bus to Lawrenceburg. And of course, she probably went down in a Cadillac. Who knows? Never can tell. But so that was Lawrenceburg, and I remember I wanted to bring Dale Wood up there because she was a great piano player on the Grand Ole Opry, and I wanted to mention her name. And the next thing that is probably pretty interesting, a lot of you may, and most of you probably have no clue to this, but my band was not one of the first. My band was the first band to ever perform in Murfreesboro on Uncle Dave Macon Days. As a matter of fact, we performed the year before it became Uncle Dave Macon Days. We played on the front steps of the courthouse in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Biggest reason that we probably got that gig is I had a banjo picker that picked for me. His name was Dave Macon. He was Uncle Dave Macon's great-grandson. Now, I believe I've got that correct. It was his great-grandson. And he picked the banjo like Earl Scruggs. And his mom and dad, his dad was Dave. Ramsey Macon was his dad's name, but he was, I believe, Dave Macon's brother's son. So I'm not too sure. I'm not good on that type of thing of knowing who makes what to whom, but I believe it was that Dave Macon was the grandson of Uncle Dave Macon. I believe that's how it goes. Through Uncle Dave Macon's brother. I believe that's correct. So anyway, they were natives of Woodbury, Tennessee, and around the Murfreesboro area. So they had been talking to people up there about starting on Uncle Dave Macon's Day. And prior to it starting, the year prior to it starting as an Uncle Dave Macon Day, we were hired to go up and play on the steps of the of the courthouse. And what they done, they blocked off the road going around the courthouse, and they set up bleachers all around out in front of where we was making our music and everything. So Larry, back to the Flex bus, Larry carried us up there on the bus to, again, it wasn't Uncle Dave Making Days at that time. It was the beginning of Uncle Dave Making Days in the making. Because we played that year up there, and there was a tremendous crowd showed up. Of course, it was free to the public. So what they did after that year, they all got together, a lot of business owners got together around there and put it together, and they started calling it Uncle Dave Making Days. And they started having contests. Well, we played the next year as a band, but after that, it became nothing more than a contest. It was a banjo picking contest, is what it was, because Uncle Dave Macon played a banjo. And they called it Uncle Dave Making Days, and the banjo was the main instrument in the category of championship of banjo pickers or whatever. But they would have fiddling contests, they'd have buck dancing contests, guitars, fiddles, they'd have all the things, but the banjo was the big deal. And Uncle Dave Macon's great-grandson played music in my band, and at the time, in those early years. And that's how come we got the job, the 2 years that we got the job. Then one year after that, I was a judge. And then after the third year of having it, I was just basically up there playing all other shade trees and wherever have you. I don't remember what year exactly they moved Uncle Dave Making Days, but they moved it from the square down, and I can't think of off the top of my head. I can't think of at this moment of but they moved it off the square and moved it down into a village or something. I will think of it here, hopefully in a few minutes. I'll think of where they moved it to, but they moved it off the square, and they started having it down there. Well, they were having huge crowds. Well, of course, Smithville, Tennessee was going on. Smithville, Tennessee would always be on the 4th of July weekend. And Uncle Dave Making Days would always be the second weekend in the month. I'm pretty sure that is correct. But anyway, so they would always have theirs the next week after the 4th of July weekend that Smithville would have theirs, because Smithville was one of the biggest ones that started in this area back in those days. And we're talking back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But Smithville was the big one. They would be sometime 300,000 people come through Smithville in a 4-day period. It's just as far as you can see with people everywhere. Well, Uncle Dave Macon started doing theirs, and theirs became the same way. They had all these vendors come in and selling, you name it, and they would sell it. And they'd all be around the square. It used to be around the square until they moved it down into, I can't even think to say myself what's the name of that they moved it down to, but they had a blacksmith shop down there, and they had a lot of things down there. And it's just off the square. It's not very far off from the square. Maybe 2 to 3 blocks from the square is where they moved it to. And I will think of it either this episode, or I will let you know on the next episode what it is, because I will think of what they actually call the village that they moved it down to. But anyway, it became a huge thing. And I was asked to play, my band was asked to play for the Square Dancers one year down there. And I think it was like the 4th or 5th year. We were asked to play for all the Square Dancers. Well, here's how that went. We started playing for the Square Dancers about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And about the time you think you're done, you look back and the line's getting longer. They just keep coming. For $300, we played for the Square Dancers, the Buck Dancers. the buck dancers, and they had teams that danced as well. But our fiddle player, whoever, I forget who the fiddle player was, I guess it was John Hager, was playing fiddle. So we were doing the fiddle playing, and for the band was for all the buck dancers and the cloggers and the teams and everything. Well, I want you to know it's the hardest work I've ever done in my life. And when we got done, about, I think it's 4 hours later, I don't know how long it was, but it was forever. We played for these young people, and they could dance. God, they could dance. They were awesome. When we got done and they handed me my money, I said, don't call me, I will call you. I didn't want to play for no more buck dancing. I didn't want to play for no more clogging. I've never played so hard. My guitar, I don't know how in the world I ever stood up under it. But God, of course, back then, again, I was drinking back then, and I didn't get as tired because I was young. It didn't bother me as bad. But let me tell you, when you're drinking and you get tired, and you're young and you get tired, you're doing something wrong. And what it was I was doing wrong is I was having to play too long. I could play like for an hour or two, and that's all fine and dandy if I'm playing a show or whatever have you. But if I'm playing for the dancers like that, and they just keep it coming, after a while you go to getting tired. So that was a little deal that a lot of you probably didn't know about Uncle Dave making days, but I was the one that played. My band was the one that made the first music that led to Uncle Dave making days. And I don't remember what year it was. It'd be easy to look up on Google, see what year it started. But if that was in the 70s, I'm 100% sure of that. So Larry carried us on the Flex bus up to that one. And so that was a little bus trip we took. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about playing at the campgrounds. We got a lot of gigs or playing places by playing the campgrounds, because the people that would come in there were from all over the United States. They were from everywhere. And that hillside would just be packed with people there at the Canway campgrounds. And we played down in the corner, a little place, had a stage down there, and they called it Squirrel Hollow. And the reason they call it Squirrel Hollow is because the place was eat up with squirrels. The trees were already huge trees anyway. And this, we talk about the KOA campgrounds. And we played in the corner down there, played a place called Squirrel Hollow. And the hillside all was like this. And then you had the house, where you checked in, everything was just behind that, and the swimming pool was just behind that. So we would get all kinds of gigs from people coming in from all over the United States from playing those campgrounds. I'll tell you pretty quick. It's not fairly quick. It's just, I'll just tell the best I can of what happened. We got a gig up in Indiana, and we were playing at a big school up there. It was a big school. Well, we were booked up there, and it was in the wintertime. So here we go back into the wintertime again. And of course, it's already snowing a little bit down here, and it is snowing a lot up there. So we get this gig, and it's for the, I believe it was for the, it wasn't Rotary Club, it was Kiwanis. It was for the Kiwanis Club. We played for the Kiwanis Club. And we played in this big school, in this gymnasium. And for those of you who's watching this, don't play music, but you know what music's supposed to sound like, and you're sitting in the middle of a big gymnasium, and you're trying to play bluegrass music, and it's bouncing off the walls here and there and everywhere. Well, let me tell you, playing bluegrass music with a banjo and a fiddle in a gymnasium is an absolute nightmare. Trust me, it's an absolute nightmare. But at any rate, Larry didn't carry us on that one for whatever reason I'm not sure of. I believe this particular one was a little bit before Larry's time, because I had Gil Stinson playing guitar with me at the time. And that was in my early years of starting playing at the campground. Gil Stinson was playing rhythm guitar and singing tenor with me. And he sang a great tenor. He's been here. A lot of you met Gil before Gil passed away. Gil has come here and played and sang with me here at Larry's Grand Old Garage. And he was a little older than I was, and he didn't drink or anything like that. He was a straight up Christian guy. I was a Christian guy, but I just drank. So what can I say? That's the way it was back then. So we get in our cars, and I'm following Gil, because Gil knows where we're going to go. Well, we leave about, best I remember, in order for us to get up there when we need to be up there, we left, I believe it was like 3 o'clock or 4 in the morning going up there. And it was snowing when we left here. Well, the further that way we got, the more snowier it got. He was in the car with him and his wife and a couple of musicians. We was in another car with my wife and 2 or 3 musicians. I'm not too sure for my first wife, her name was Jerry, I'm not too sure that she went on that trip. She didn't go with us a whole lot of times when we went somewhere like that. She wouldn't go, but I'm not too sure she was with us on that. But of course, Ronnie was, Dave Macon was, John Hager was. Anyway, we all went up there, and it sort of reminded me a little bit, that trip sort of reminded me a little bit like the trip did somewhat after that in the old Flex bus where there wasn't any defrost. Now, our vehicles had good heaters, had good defrost the whole 9 yards, but when your heat goes to heating up inside the car and it's cold outside, it's hard for it to keep up so you can see through the windshield. So I remember sort of almost looking through a round hole when we were going up the interstate, going up through there, and it's snowing, where the defrost wouldn't keep it good and clean all the way across. So further that way we went, the colder it got. So anyway, we got up there about noon that same day. We got up there about noon. I think our show was that night at 7 again. So we had to kill 4 or 5 hours, but of course we had to set up first. So it took us a couple of hours just to get set up. So it was cold. There was snow on the ground about 8 to 10 inches deep when we got up there. But we didn't figure nobody was going to show up. But let me tell you, up north, snow doesn't bother them. They're used to it. They get out, it don't make any difference what's going on. It's snowing, it's sleeting, it don't make no difference. They pay not a bit of attention to it, that as though if it were rain. So we went ahead on and set up, got everything set up, went out, ate, come back, started putting our show on, and this music is hitting off these walls and off the floor in the gymnasium. And back in those days, when I was younger, I was picking banjo, and a banjo bouncing off of a wall is all the sound you ever heard. And I believe I just can't explain what the sound sounds like when these fiddles, these banjos, and everything just bouncing everywhere. So hard to hear, and up on this big huge stage, and it's like a basketball court or whatever. But anyway, we went on, got up there, started doing our show, and that place started packing them in there. And directly, that place was just packed full. They did some good advertising. And again, back in those days, that's when gas was 30 cents a gallon. In the 70s, gasoline was 30 cents a gallon. And everybody had campers, and everybody was traveling, everybody was camping. And 30 cents a gallon was fantastic. I mean, gasoline was very cheap. And so everybody came on in and watched the program. We did our 2 45-minute shows, and we packed up everything. And time we got out of there, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning time we got out of there. So we drove back to Nashville. We got back in Nashville, I believe it's 7 or 8 o'clock the next morning. We got back into Nashville. So we left all the snow behind us, and it's amazing how those people came out. They had saw us play that summer in Nashville at the KOA campground. They had saw us. That bunch was there. Qantas Club was there. Saw us perform and hired us to come to Indiana and put a show on for them up there from watching us down here in the summertime. Well, we got to do our thing for them in the summertime down here and the wintertime up there. So that's sort of how that worked out. But we got a tremendous amount of shows by doing the campgrounds like we did. Everybody was wanting bands back then. Everybody, country music was awesome. It was huge back in the 70s, 60s and 70s. And we was able to get so many shows. I'm going to tell you on episode 22 about a trip we took up to Iowa. We got a show booked up in Iowa on people that make Winnebagos. We got a Forest City, Iowa is where I don't know where they still make the Winnebagos there now or not. But Forest City, Iowa is where I'm going to tell you about on episode 20, maybe be 22, I believe, because I think I'm on 21 right now. Sort of get lost a little bit down there, but I'll tell you about the trip we took. And this is on the Flex bus. We're back to the Flex bus now. Larry's back in the picture. Larry Clemens is back in the picture, which he owned at the time, the Larry's Grand Old Garage, but it was really a garage then. So the Flex bus, I'm going to tell you about the trip to Iowa and going to Des Moines, Iowa, and all that stuff. And it was quite a trip, and it was it'll make a good episode. I think you'll enjoy the episode real well. But right now, that episode there, I told you about going to Indiana and getting all the bookings out of the campgrounds and everything. And that was something, we stayed busy all the time just by playing the campgrounds and putting on a good show out there. And we did some good bluegrass music back in those eras. And we got back into Nashville and, of course, went on doing our shows. They would let us play at the KOA campground. Inside the office, they had this big room. They would let us play my band got to play the year round at KOA campgrounds because we got to play inside the office area where they had the games all around the walls and had tables for people to sit and eat at and where you checked in at and everything. And they would let us play there all winter long. And that was very fortunate for us. We were able to do that. Most of the bands that were playing Opryland, places like that, they were playing the campgrounds as well as us. But they chose at the time, Benny Goodman chose us to play all winter long. And he didn't have to, but he let us play all winter long in the office there. And again, John Hager was with me back then. And I'll have to think of who all was with me then, because at that time, someone else was playing. I'm not too sure. I was playing banjo then. We're back in the 70s, in the mid 70s here, and I'm playing banjo. And of course, the Uncle Dave Macon days, I told you about that earlier. But at that time, Dave Macon come along a little after that, because he was only like 16 years old when he come along, and my son was a year younger than him. So I'll tell you more about what I was doing in the mid 70s. And I was picking banjo, and we was picking in the office there at the KOA campgrounds. And I'll tell you about the trip we made to Iowa, Forest City, Iowa, and the Winnebago people. I'll tell you about that on episode number 22. Right now, I'd like to tell you we're going to be at the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church this coming Sunday from 11 to 12 o'clock. Nelson Garrett is a pastor, and boy, he'll lay it on you. So we'd love to have you come to our church. It's at 101 Flat Ridge Road. Just go through Millersville, top the hill. There's Flat Ridge Road, right there by Napa Auto Parts. You'll see Napa Auto Parts on the corner. Our church is on the other corner. We'd love to have you there from 11 to 12 o'clock on the Sunday. If you can't, tune it in on Facebook. So, because we'll be on Facebook. And right now I'm going to get ready around here. We're going to play y'all a couple of songs and to end number 21, and I'll see you on number 22. We're going to talk about trip to Forest City, Iowa. Until that time, we'll see you on 22. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Charlie, to kick us a Brandon man off in the key of E, Charlie, if you don't mind. Black mark follows me. Now I'm a friendly man on my name. Play it now. If I live to be 100, yes, I'll never hear my dream. 'Cause everybody knows I've been in jail. No matter where I'm living, I'll just tell them where I've been. Or to send me back to prison if I fail. I'd like to hold my head up and be proud of who I am. They won't let my secrets go untold. I take the dead out of order, but they're still not satisfied. Now I'm a brand new man out in the cold. Little fiddle time. country music. Ain't nothing like country music. Not when it's played like those guys can play it. That's for sure. Jesus died on the cross from a dogwood tree. He gave his life and soul just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall